My project is on criminal psychology and prevention. Just a quick warning to people out there, there will be talk signs and some images that may be graphic to some people. This is all for informational purposes. If anyone feels squeamish or distraught by this, I ask that you please don't watch. Besides that, thank you for your time and please enjoy the presentation. So it is said that there are anywhere from 35 to 500 serial killers at large in the United States. And it is believed that one of all homicides since 1983, that 1 in 4 have been committed by multiple murderers, or repeat offenders in that sense. So we got to ask ourselves, what is a serial killer? And one of the most challenging topics when starting criminology and profiling is to truly define what is a serial killer. But the most commonly accepted definition provided by the FBI, which is the Federal Bureau of Investigation, is a series of 2 or more murders committed as separate events, usually but not always by one offender acting alone. We're going to mainly here focus on what is profiling, which is known as the recording and analysis of a person's psychological and behavioral characteristics so as to assess or predict their capabilities in a certain sphere or to assist in identifying a particular subgroup of people. So my research question is, what factors lead to the development of serial killers, and what are the methods that can be used in order to prevent this condition from affecting the individual who could become one and those who are around them? So the first topic I want to focus on is categorization and the identification of serial killers. So when it comes to classifying and categorizing serial killers in crime, there are 7 main groups that serial killers will fit into. There are those who have desperation and those who find themselves in a desperate situation, such as burglaries, fraud, embezzlement. We have greed and exploitation. So people who find an intense selfish desire to be better than those around them, such as your exploitation, your drug dealing, and your murder for hire. We have rage and people who are unable to control their aggressive behaviors. So it's going to be your stabbings, your murders, your assaults. We also have revenge and retribution. This is when subject A will become enraged at subject B, and their goal is to get payback on them. These would be your planned murders, your assaults, and your thefts. We also have those who do it for, in a sense, frolic and fun. These are people who are just trying to have a good time and are often involved with mayhem and mischief. These are going to be your drag racing and your vandalism. We also have those who have suffered from addiction. These are when people are under the condition of being addicted to a particular substance, thing, or activity. These are going to be your drug possession, your gambling, and assault under the influence. We also have people who suffer from mental illnesses, and these are people who already commit crimes when diagnosed with mental illness. And in the bottom right here, we have Ted Bundy, who is said to have found pleasure and joy in the crimes he committed. This would then mean that he would be categorized as both a rage and frolic serial killer. But we're going to ask ourselves, how did we get to that point? So we focus on the childhood effects, and that there are several factors out there that will lead to the inevitable downfall of our children and their inevitable turn into a serial killer, but these are never fully 100% given. So childhood trauma and abuse is the greatest factor that acts on a person to make them snap. So the main 3 things that add to this are going to be your substances, your income, and your health and behavioral problems. So the most common symptoms of child abuse leading to crime or killings is spanking, animal abuse, bedwetting at higher years, and arson. These are the most common signs that most invicts and convicts will report when being interviewed, like what did they do as a child and so and so. So one of the main things I want to focus on is prevention, and when seeing signs that are common as a child that can lead to being a serial murderer, it is important that to give those in help the need that they deserve. So the most common technique for treating these early signs is going to be your therapy, which is going to be trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, and also your child-parent therapy. So the coping techniques and support strategies are going to help to encourage the child to tell you what happened and like what's going on in the household. We also want to remind them that they aren't responsible for the abuse. So you'll see some kids who think that they deserve what's happening to them, which just is never true. We also want to offer comfort to the child and know that they're safe. We also want to report the abuse to those who need and who need to inform them of that. And we also want to help just overall make the child remain safe and so he feels comforted. So for my product, I'm going to move on and view how to form a profile. So here you see the most basic form of a profile I made, and it goes over the likely predicted characteristics of a killer based off their previous crimes. This is information will always vary from each case, and length of the profile can always change. But the main things we're going to look at today is whether or not the killer is organized or disorganized, the MO or the modus operandi, and the signature of a killer. So we're going to apply this to a product of a real world. So we're going to ask ourselves, who was the Unabomber? So his real name is Theodore John Kaczynski. He is also known by Ted Kaczynski, as most people say. He was born May 2nd in 1942 in Chicago, Illinois. His education, he went to 4 years of Harvard University and also spent another 5 years at the University of Michigan. He was known for being a mathematical prodigy, but he soon gave up that lifestyle due to his ideals. Here we have a quick video which will go over what he did.
We are hunting the deadliest serial bomber in history, the Unabomber. For 17 years, he's been planting and mailing bombs. 16 bombs, 3 people killed, dozens injured. And we really have no friggin' clue who he is or why he's doing this. And we call him the Unabomber because his early targets were universities and airlines. UN for university, A for airline, Unabomb. He calls himself FC for Freedom Club. It's how he signs all his letters. It's also how he signs his bombs. 17 years of bombs, all signed by FC.
So there we see what the Unabomber did at the filming of this. So we go on to see this next slide, and we have the official mugshot in the top left of his capture on April 3rd in 1996. And on the right side, we also see what the one of the most famous police sketches of him. It came in 1987 when a woman reported seeing the man parked outside the parking lot outside of Salt Lake City moments before a bomb exploded. And on the bottom left, this was the cabin he lived in Lincoln, Montana. And this cabin kind of shows just how antisocial and how much he believed in his ideology. And we'll start to see his ideology in what he put out to the New York Times here. So we understand what he did, but we want to understand why he is what he did. So for that, we have his manifesto, which is also known as the Industrial Society and Its Future. And having a killer's manifesto is a rare and very intriguing thing to have, because with these manifestos, we are able to truly understand why it is what he did and what he believed. So a quick summary for this is it's an essay arguing about the Industrial Revolution and how it began a harmful process of technology destroying nature while forcing humans to adapt to machines and creating a social political order that suppresses humans. So for this profile, we're going to mainly focus on what specifically the Unabomber Manifesto told us about the Unabomber. We're not going to focus on any crime scene evidence. So one of the greatest helps to finding the Unabomber was use of linguistics analysis on the manifesto. So linguistic analysis, the analysis of language or its structure, analysis that takes the language itself rather than the subject matter, and premises focus on that for the study. They use this technique to help identify the language used in similar areas of which the same language is used in the US. So through this, they were able to track similar words used in that of newspapers in Chicago, Illinois from the 1930s, 1940s, and 1950s. So for this, they were able to find that he was in the Chicago, Illinois area. So the next thing we were able to further identify and come for is that the Unabomber was very organized, just due to the fact that he had, one, not left very much evidence behind his scene, but also the fact that his manifesto was very complex in an organized manner, showing that he had a high IQ, which is associated with those of organized killers. So for that, we're going to say he's an organized killer. So much like how we were to reinforce at the end that Unabomber was very organized in his crime, we were also to tell that he has a high intelligence due to the use of vocabulary, and also a high level of thought displayed through his ideology. So the ideology of machinery and that the Industrial Revolution has hurt the society as a whole, and that has destroyed nature, is an extreme ideology that, partnered with knowing that they are most likely an organized serial bomber, means that they are most likely a loner who chooses to stay away from society. And this can be further explained through his cabin that he lived out of the woods, not by any people around it. So the last thing we're able to fully confirm is the Unabomber signature. Like we seen earlier, he had those two initials of FC that he put at the end of all of his bombs, and that he signed his own manifesto with, and the FC stands for Freedom Club. so that'll be his signature. And the fact that we were able to fill out this much information just by using the manifesto and not using any evidence from crime scenes not only shows just how rare and informative having a manifesto like this is, and just how much it was able to jumpstart the FBI's case and push them to really catching him, but also shows how much information a profiler is able to get just by this one source. So another important thing we don't understand is what could we have done to help prevent this from occurring? So we want to ask ourselves, what could we have done to help prevent Ted from snapping? So Kaczynski during his 4 year spent at Harvard, when he was still being very young for his age for being there, he was recruited to take part in a 3 year abusive psychological program that of which he did not know it would be abusive like that. And he would then go on after being arrested to quote that it was the worst experience of his life during that psychological program at Harvard. Now, in no way am I trying to bring up any sincerity, understand why, and understand why Ted did what he did during that. But the level of stress and abuse he went through during these experiments breaks almost every ethical standard used in today's practice. Not only the fact that the schools were allowed this process, but nothing was said to help to stop this abuse is a real problem during that time. Um, the main things we could have done to help prevent this from occurring is having like ethical standards at the time placed in so experimentation like that wouldn't occur, which we do have in now, which helps from this case not occurring again. But at the time, at the end of the study, it is said that Ted developed schizophrenia, and the ways to help treat that are going to be your antipsychotic and anti-terror medication, but he probably did not have access to those at the time. So the next best thing he will have is going to be rehabilitation, cognitive, behavioral, and psychoeducational therapy to both Ted and the other 21 participants of the experiment. And this is a photo of Ted during his time at Harvard. And here we have the answer to the research question. So there are several identifiable traits that are that people can see to have as a child that can maybe lead to being them becoming a serial killer, but it's never going to be that 100%. So with early identification and useful methods, we are able to help the individual and lower that chance of them actually becoming a serial killer and going to that snapping point, such as medication, your therapy, group talk, and just having that one connection really helps a person from not turning. That's the whole thing people understand is that human connection. So I thank you all for watching, and I hope you all enjoyed.